Today we have in our studio Mr. Dinesh Tanna. He is president and founder of Tanna Insurance, and somehow he is linked with more than 1,000 different type of small, medium, big Indian businesses in this area through his services, insurance services. Today we are going to talk to him about insurance services for various types of businesses, restaurants, retail, grocery stores, technology companies, and any type of why insurance is such an important part. And many of us who run small to mid-sized businesses sometimes tend to ignore this aspect. So we are very glad to have Dinesh. Welcome to our studio.
Thank you very much. Good to see you. Thank you for having me.
Sure, absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you here. So first thing we want to start with you is we know that a lot of Indian community is very entrepreneurial, and every day, every other day, somebody is starting some businesses or expanding. How important the insurance is for these companies?
Well, it's very important. For starters, most of the companies, whether they get financing through a bank or they're tenants like you and I are with large retail company, large real estate companies, they're all required to carry some sort of insurance. For example, the office building that I'm in, I can't even rent the space without providing them with a certificate of liability insurance. And same goes with most of the companies that need financing and the bank's required. Additionally, the technology companies that you mentioned and the service companies, they do business with other large corporations, and those large corporations also require them to carry insurance in order to do business with them. It's not only the fact that they're required to carry this as a contractual agreement or an agreement with the landlord or the bank, but it's also the right thing to do to protect yourself from liabilities.
Now, we'll come back into a little bit details about various types of insurance which is required by these businesses, or they must have it. But you have more than 1,000 clients in this market, right, which is a very, very large number. And so how did you reach there, and what is the typical profile of your clients?
Yeah, we have approximately 1,300 clients now. And back in 2002, I used to work for insurance companies prior to that. I was in managerial positions. And then companies downsize or they move, and then finally decided that I just wanted to go off on my own. That was the right thing to do. So I went to a friend of mine who has an insurance agency in Needham and said, I'd like to place some business through you because in my business we have to have contracts with insurance companies. Mm-hmm. If I do your insurance, to place it with a company, I have to have a contract with them or go through a broker. And since I didn't have any business at that time, I brokered through this friend of mine in Needham and started to write some business.
Actually, I do remember visiting your Needham office long time ago.
Yes, right, exactly. So we grew every year. It was a small start. The first year, I probably got about 10 or 15 clients, maybe a few more. And then it just took off. I started to advertise with you, I guess.
Yes,
and
I do remember that. Yeah.
I started to do a lot of networking, and it was all word of mouth. And our community, even as large as it is, it's still pretty small,
Yeah, okay.
So
small in what way?
Small in the sense that a lot of people know everybody, and so if the word gets out pretty quickly.
Sure.
So if I've helped a few people, word gets out that, maybe you ought to try him, And my only, anytime I went to see a client, what I would tell them is if it was an Indian client, I said, don't do business with me because I'm Indian. Do business with me because I know this business better than any other agent out there.
Sure.
And, and that was put to the test a few times, obviously, over the years, and then so it grew. I started to get more clients, and it sort of became an easy process after that. one thing led to another.
So, like for example, if you go in various categories of businesses, for example, so what percentage will be restaurant? How will be deal with grocery store? So,
Actually, my biggest percentage is the technology and the life sciences. I do approximately 30% of my business is in that group.
and in that area, you mean that could be the venture-backed companies, startups,
Correct,
existing.
correct. A product company, a services company, a venture-backed company. I mean, you and I have both been to Thai. And companies like that who start up.
Thai, like in this.
Thai, yes. And there are so many people at Thai who are clients of mine already.
Sure.
And they're startup companies. And then there's other companies. Fortunately for me, many of the clients that I took on back when I started these technology companies have grown 100-fold. I mean, my growth is nothing compared to what their growth is.
Sure.
And
so when you started your insurance company, in your office in Needham, or at that particular period of time, you started with tech companies, or what was the first profile of first typical clients of yours?
Well, it was general insurance I wanted to start. When I went in, my background was very large insurances for very large corporations. But then I worked for companies at that time.
Sure.
So when you start off on your own, it's very difficult to get into that arena where somebody's paying, say, $5 million in insurance. So you have to start small. And a typical profile was, initially, I just wanted. I knew that technology was an area in Boston where I might have some success because I had some background in it, technology insurance, and then the rest of it was retail and services, and that I might have success. So I really wanted to, since I had a pretty broad background, I wanted to sort of address the needs of almost all businesses, which was pretty much what I did then and what I can do today also, So technology and services was the two main areas that I wanted to focus on at that time. The retail sector came a little later. About
in your business?
In my business,
sure.
Yeah. For me.
Sure, yeah.
I was introduced, through friends and through other businesses who I networked with, accountants and what have you, I was introduced to a couple of friends and saying, we have a need. We need somebody who can help us with our insurances, So I went and met a couple of them and said, okay. So came back and started to provide insurance for those people. One thing led to another. These folks not only referred me to other people, but they also grew themselves. A person that had, for example, 2 stores, a liquor store, convenience store, in 2002, now has more than 50. So as they grew, I grew. And so that sort of took off on the retail side, So.
Now, I have one question for you is, since now you have really followed this, and our audience is mostly, the Indian South Asian audience, so we want to keep the discussion a little bit focused on them.
Yeah.
So you have watched this business market of Indians and South Asians in this area very closely. And of course, those people who came here before, it really started, small businesses, like you start a small store or liquor store or grocery store or restaurant and all those things. And then the technology boom came.
Yes.
So how the Indian market or South Asian market, business-wise, how the landscape has changed and where you see more growth coming up?
One of my biggest surprises, since I started the business, I have found that Indians are extreme. I always knew Indians were entrepreneur, but the extent of their entrepreneurship has amazed me. I did also. Our community has done very well, and I did not realize that there were that many. You mentioned, I heard about restaurants, but I did not realize that there were so many retail outlets out there that were owned by Indian community.
Sure.
Once I got into the business, I found that out, that there were a lot of our Indian community. There must be more than, I would say, at least conservatively speaking, about 1,000 stores.
Yeah.
In the
and maybe the franchise industry.
And these are all independent stores.
Sure.
Now they're getting into much bigger items. Originally, it was just one store here, one store there. Now you're talking about mega stores and mega buildings. These people are getting into some bigger operations, you know. Same thing goes with the hotel industry. You know, there was a small, people used to own smaller hotels. Now you find good hotels, name brands, the Hiltons, the Marriotts are being owned by the Indians also, you know.
Sure.
So growth has come, and our community has actually done extremely well, you know.
Excellent. So now let us switch back to the types of insurances.
Yes.
So what are the main insurance types of insurance which we as a small business owners or mid-sized business owners should have?
The most common one is the general liability. As I mentioned, you know, you move into an office space and you need general liability insurance. Somebody comes into your office, trips and falls, they get hurt, you know, they could sue you. If you had insurance, that protects you. So that's the most common one.
So that's we have to have.
Everybody has to have the liability insurance. So whether you're an office owner or a technology company or a store owner, hotel, whatever, you know, doctor's office, whatever. That's the most common one. Then there's the property one, which is also pretty common. You have furniture, fixtures, office computers, things like that. So that's another common. So these are the two most common. Then, you know, within the property section also, there's, for a store owner, there might be some robbery coverage, there might be some freezer coverage, you know, there could be employee dishonesty coverage, signs, you know, break off all the time. So all that sort of comes within the property section of it.
Okay.
The liability, as I said, is trip and fall. There's a new thing now called employment practices liability, which is very common. And that covers basically three things. You know, it covers sexual harassment, discrimination, and wrongful termination. So that is becoming pretty standard mainstream now. You know, most of the policies, the small business policies, have some sort of limits on those on the policy. And we advise our clients that it's necessary. We've started to see claims come through on that also. So it's necessary. So these two things are most common. Then the coverage is the workers' compensation. And
So that's we must have to have.
everybody who has a business,
Sure.
who has employees,
Sure.
has to have workers' compensation.
Yeah. Is there any limit that you must have X number of employees to have that?
No, there's no limit. If you're an LLC and you have no employees, you don't need to have it. If you're a sole proprietor, partnership, you don't need to have it. If you're a corporation, you can exclude yourself as an executive officer. But if you have any employees, whether it's part-time or whatever, you have to have workers' comp. That's mandatory. And then you go on from there, other coverages, especially in the technology and the service area that we find. One is called professional liability. Professional liability, basically, if you're a doctor, that's malpractice. If you're a technology company, that's errors and omissions, you know. If you're a general service company, also errors and omissions come into play. That's pretty important. Many companies, many clients require that of the technology companies. Then there is crime coverage, fiduciary crime. That also is becoming very common coverage. Then there is directors and officers. And you could go through a whole gamut of coverages.
Is there any, like, you know, we have also seen that a lot of non-profits run or started by Indian community here in this area. And is there any some sort of insurance required for them, or it depends on the
There's
type?
no requirement, but recommended directors and officers. I insure quite a few temples, and I recommend to them that they should carry directors and officers insurance, you know. So that is, besides the liability, because there's a lot of traffic in those temples, you know.
Sure.
So they're required to carry, liability is necessary, but directors and officers is recommended also. So that's required. And then I always recommend excess liability, or you might know it as an umbrella policy, you know, which covers higher liability, whether it's your personal policies or business policies. That it protects you up to an amount that's higher than standard 1 million or 2 million, you know. And depending on the size of your business, the revenues, that is always necessary, that you carry an umbrella policy for protection, you know. And then there's a lot of sub-coverages within those limits. You know, there's kidnap and ransom, and then there's non-owned and hired, the commercial auto policies, So there's a whole gamut of policies that if you own a small business that's really uh, has a good amount of revenue and you're growing fast, I think it's a good bet that you're going to require at least about 12 to 15 types of insurance.
Yeah, so now we want to know, how did you get into the insurance industry?
I came to this country in '79, and most of the folks that came to this country from India at that time were either engineers or doctors.
What about you?
I was not.
You
So
were. So what were you?
So I actually was a commerce major in
Okay.
school. I went to HR college in Mumbai.
Okay.
I was at a boarding school prior to that, and so when I came to this country, insurance industry or banking was the two big sectors. So I went to work for an organization called Insurance Services Office, and they promulgated rates for specific buildings or based on classification or characteristics of some classes, they promulgated rates for those businesses. So I went to work for them. I was not an actuary, but it really gave me a good insight into how the rates were promulgated and what factors were being used. So I was there for a couple of years, and then
And that was in Boston, or you came
it
somewhere
was in
else?
Boston.
So
It
you
was
came to Boston?
Yeah, it was right on Federal Street here in Boston.
And you stayed in Boston?
Most of the time, yeah.
Okay.
Most of the time. Then I went to, somebody told me, you want to be in the insurance business, you got to work for an insurance company. ISO is great. ISO still exists, by the way, today, but so I went to work for a bunch of insurance companies, including AIG, and, I progressed. I went a couple of years in Michigan, AIG promoted me there, and then in Connecticut, and then I came back here. And
So when was the second time you came back to Boston?
I came in '79. I was here until '89,
Okay.
'88 or '89. Then I went to Connecticut with AIG, and then they sent me to Michigan, and then I came back again in '92.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I've been here since then. And then I worked for another company at that time, also a multinational, and then I went to work for a startup. Workers' compensation, because I had expertise in big workers' compensation, and that was great. Except it was a subsidiary of Harvard Pilgrim, and Harvard Pilgrim at that time was running into some issues, So I left, and then my wife said, she says, you've got so much experience in the business. Why not, start an agency? But starting an agency, you needed volume.
Sure.
So it wasn't that easy, and that's when I went to this guy in Needham. In between, I did a little bit of consulting, which actually I kept doing until about 2010. I was doing the consulting for larger companies that had gone into bankruptcy, and I was a expert witness for workers' compensation. I did a lot of their audits, and I did a lot of I was in front of arbitration panels. I used to go and give testimonies and things like that, So that went on for a few years, and that was good. While I was setting up my business, that also provided me a good source of, avenue for income, and while I grow this business, So it, and then by the time about 2010 came around, I just didn't have time for the other stuff, because we were growing quite a bit. And then in 2011, we had grown to a point now, we've got a lot of clients, we've got a lot of premium volume, and we got to a point where I needed to start thinking about perpetuation plans, what my kids were going to do. Two boys are going to come into the business. One was going to be in what I do, the other one was going to go into the financial planning side. So,
all your kids are involved with the business?
One of them is involved in the financial. He works for Northwestern, but he also works in my office for a couple of half days a week, and we share customers.
Sure.
So it's been very good for both of us. Because he's a graduate of Babson, and he's got a lot of entrepreneurial contacts, and so he refers those customers to me, which is good for me because now I'm getting into the second generation.
Sure.
And he's being part of that. And my younger son is going to graduate from Bentley this year, and he is going to be working for Travelers Insurance Company. He's going to train there for 3 years, and then he's going to come into our business. So the perpetuation plan had to be done. So I hired a consultant who I knew who is good in this business. He does a lot of mergers and acquisitions and advising agencies. So I told him, I said, this is my plan, give me some suggestions. I said, I think I know what I need to do, but I said, I want to hear it from you. And he said, and the first thing he told me was, which I already knew, was you got to get out of, doing business with your partner that you have in Needham, because that will enhance value to your agency.
Sure, sure.
You become independent,
Sure.
And I didn't have any non-competes or anything. My business was my business. We had an agreement, and it's just that when we made that agreement, I had nothing. By the
Sure.
time I got out, I had a lot.
Sure, sure.
So, but it was good. It was I still keep in touch with them. We still do business, but I got out and I went ahead and so this consultant who helped me with this said, also I'll introduce you to a couple of more people, and maybe you ought to think about a cluster or a network. So we went through the courtship basically for about a year and a half, and then finally we decided, yes, we have some synergy, we have some chemistry, so let's form a network, and we did. We went through his office, went through the process, we went through the lawyers, we had all the contracts drawn up, and thus Insurance Agency Services LLC was born.
Okay. And which year was that?
That was last year.
Last year, okay.
Yeah, so actually late 2013.
Okay.
So we formed that. So basically, we are equal partners in Insurance Agency Services LLC, but Tanna Insurance Inc. is my own.
Yes, yes.
So what has happened is,
And where the offices are both? The same place? Or
we've got 3 offices.
Three.
One's in Newton, Denver's, and Burlington.
Okay.
So we have all the backroom support for personal lines. So home and auto is being handled out of one office through the insurance. So the employees have been moved into the Insurance Agency Services LLC. And we're going to do the same for the commercial lines pretty soon. We're also attracting more agents into our network, not as partners, but as
Provider?
we can help with the service, and also their business. If we can consolidate their business into our business, it helps with negotiating with the insurance companies for better returns.
Sure, sure.
So, and then in the end, at some point, if there's we're also looking into maybe there's opportunities for buying out other agents too, people that want to sell out, acquisitions and all, So the plan is in place,
Excellent.
waiting for my kids to start coming in.
Good, good.
So the execution's going to take some time,
Okay.
So
Dinesh, one more question I have for you is, those of us who buy insurance and we never use it,
yeah.
and we always talk about and joke among friends and colleagues, that, I wasted so much money about insurance, I never used it.
Yeah.
So what is your data and what is your analysis that how often your clients have used and any interesting experience in that?
Well, I'll give you 2 answers to that.
Okay.
I was you mentioned the New Year's party. I was at a friend's house, a New Year's party, and a close acquaintance basically asked me the same question,
Okay.
saying, I've never really claimed, and so I said, here's my suggestion. I said, I don't insure his house, but I said, have you paid up your mortgage? And he said, yes. I said, well, then you don't require any insurance.
Yeah.
I says, don't buy any insurance on your house. I said, on your car, you need a minimum insurance according to state law. But on your house, I said, nobody's going to come after you. You've paid it up. The bank doesn't require anything. And I said, if anybody slips and falls on your premises, it's your liability. So I said, well, so his response to me, well, what happens if the house burns down? I said, that's why you buy insurance.
Right, yeah, sure.
Okay? And the thing is that I understand that people don't claim it. The other example I can give you is my own. In 2000, my wife unfortunately had a bad accident. Where
Car accident.
A car accident. Where there were about 5 girls in our car. My wife was driving. She was making a left turn. The person coming from the other side was making a right turn. So my wife thought that she could go because the other person was also merging onto the exit. The other person did not merge, came straight, hit the car head on, and that other person was hurt pretty badly. Fortunately, in our cars, all the airbags deployed, nobody got hurt. We got sued. I had enough insurance. Now, what I can tell you is the amount of money that the insurance company paid for that claim, I will not pay enough premium during my lifetime to cover that.
Now, can you disclose the amount or
It was more than six figures.
six? Okay, okay,
It was in the high six figures.
okay.
So things happen, you know.
So the insurance is must. Now, one more thing is that you deal with so many businesses,
Sure.
and if I asked you to tell me three main reasons businesses fail, what is those three elements in your experience?
Well, on the Indian businesses side, I've seen very few businesses fail. People have had problems, and one of the reasons generally is that there's some sort of theft going on, okay, employee theft, or if somebody's running the show. The other thing is there's some excesses going on, you know. People are spending more money than what's coming in, and the third reason, see, restaurant business, they say, fails very often. But I haven't seen a lot of restaurant businesses fail, you know. I mean, people have run into problems, but they've bounced back, and you know, and or they've opened up other shops or what have you. The convenience store, the liquor store side, yeah, there have been a few closings, but that's because, you know, people made the decision, okay, I don't want to be here. So you move on to some other place. You sell it or you give it to somebody else, you know. I haven't seen personally a lot of businesses go under.
What about those businesses who do well? So what will be the three key features of those businesses who are really doing well?
Well, the people that are doing well are the ones that actually have a lot of customers, you know. They're in the right area. So location is everything. We know that. Everybody knows that, right? So the location is everything. And the third thing is, obviously, again, like I said, you know, not really having a lot of excesses. So, you know, if you have enough money coming in, you know, don't spend more than what's coming in, you know. Sometimes people tend to do that. They have this grandiose plan saying, wow, I've done so well here, let me go out and buy something else. And it doesn't work sometimes, you know. So the economy has had a factor, you know, in some of the businesses. You hear a lot of retail stores complaining about how businesses dwindled, you know. But again, they've moved on to other things, you know. They've moved on to bigger stuff, properties, you know, buying, you know. Liquor stores are doing better than convenience stores, for example. Technology companies have...
Liquor stores always do better, right?
Yeah. Technology companies have... that's amazing. I mean, even in the... I basically, and I can speak for my business, we've grown every single year. Even during the worst recession in 2009-10, we grew quite a bit. And I have to say, a lot of it was because of technology companies that kept growing, number one. And number two, a lot of our Indian retail businesses, they just kept buying more properties, more stores. It's amazing. I pretty much get a request every week that somebody's buying another property, you know, and they need insurance.
Okay. Now, my last question to you is, again, you know, if you can summarize that three reasons why I should buy insurance.
Well, I'll give you one good reason.
Okay, give me three.
Okay. Well, three reasons is, the best reason is to really so you can sleep better at night. Okay. If you feel, like you said earlier, that you know you're buying a lot of insurance, but you're not getting anything in return, I always recommend higher deductibles for people. You know, if you have a house that's worth $2 million, you know, you can afford to have a deductible of $50,000 or $10,000, whatever. Buy a higher deductible, so you pay less money up front, and you know you can, if there's a claim, you can easily you know, take care of that claim. But so to protect yourself against liability, you also build a lot of assets, you know. So if you get sued, there's a very good possibility that you could end up losing a lot of it, you know, if you have not gotten it protected.
Do you have any data in the market that, you know, what percentage businesses are sued every year or something?
No. There's no such data that, I mean, I'm sure there is something that insurance companies have general data on how much claims they...
Let's talk about the claims. Do you have any number we can put there?
How many claims? That would be.
Yeah, roughly a percentage, like, every year we get
No.
X. No.
No, I can tell you the biggest claim, me personally, from the time that I've done business, the biggest claim that has been paid out for my client is $5 million that I know of.
Did you?
Since I've been in my own business. When I worked on the company side, we've seen claims of, 50, $60 million liability claims. And little things that you don't hear of, a neurosurgeon, something fell on him in a store, and now he can't practice. And he's making $900,000 a year, and he's 40 years old. Well, you do the calculation,
Sure.
things like that, So I've seen those type of claims, and it's very common for people to sue, and then when you sue, you have to defend them.
Sure.
And I'd rather have the insurance company defend me than me trying to defend myself.
What about paperwork, for example? Like how intensive or how important it is to have all the paperwork lined up for the insurance?
For you or for me?
For the insurance companies, yes.
You mean when there's a claim?
When there's a claim, yes.
Yeah, I mean it's important. If you had a claim in your house and you're claiming certain items, insurance companies want to know what you have. I always suggest to people that they should take pictures of the rooms that they have, or have an inventory. Of course, things keep changing all the time, and people don't have the time to do all that. But if you take pictures and keep it at a safe place, or if you take an inventory, then when you have a claim, it works. The other thing is jewelry. Jewelry is not covered on a standard homeowner's policy.
Really?
It's not covered. You have to buy a separate rider. So you can either buy it as a on a blanket basis, or if you have items that are over a certain amount, you have to specify them and list them, in order for them to be covered. So that's some people have, as you know, in our community,
a
lot of jewelry.
Jewelry.
Some people choose to cover it, some people don't.
Sure.
If it's in a safe, then the rates are very low if you take it out once in a while. If you leave it at home, then the rates are a little bit higher. So it runs across the board. So it all depends on what you want to do. Most people don't like to buy jewelry coverage because of the expense factors.
Sure.
But again, like I say, insurance, everybody has a problem with insurance until they have a claim.
Until they have a claim, yes, exactly. Sure.
And then they want the insurance company to pay it.
Sure.
So.
But I think you summarized it very well, that you can sleep at peace. I think that's the one.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what I would recommend to people. It's part of the culture in this country. Insurance is. Not only
insurance and suing, both two are the part of the culture, right?
Well, it probably goes hand in hand. I don't know.
Okay.
But it's part of the culture, and you can sleep better. It's also it's also becoming part of the contractual agreements almost in all facets of the businesses. Whether, like I said earlier, whether you're a tenant, whether you're a vendor, or even if you're a landlord, or you have financing through a bank, you're required to carry insurance by all these folks.
Excellent.
And that also drives the cost in certain areas, I guess, like flood. You've heard a lot about the flood insurance,
Sure.
But unfortunately, that's what drives it,
Yeah. Excellent. Dinesh, thank you very much for coming to our studio. It was very helpful and very informative.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.